Welcome back, everybody. In this brief but very important presentation, what we're going to be doing is detailing the big assignment that we have for this class. It's essentially the last big thing outside of the exams that you have remaining. So even though there's not necessarily a ton that I can talk about with this, since a lot of this is sort of on you trying to find information, I do want to reserve an entire class time to it so you can start thinking about how to access some of the material that you'll need for it and start brainstorming how you're going to try to approach this 30-point project. Now, for this paper, which is not only assigned to our class, but actually all of the intro classes at St. Mary's, what we're going to be doing is giving you an opportunity to get exposure to research in the field and exposure to a very important topic that we want you to be sensitive to, the topic of poverty and how it impacts psychology. In particular, for this paper, you're going to be looking at the overlap between poverty and developmental psychology. For you to do this, what we provided you with is 4 articles that talk about how poverty and psychology have been related. These articles are a little bit older than some of the ones that I'm liking you to find on your own, but my hope is that these articles that we're providing are a kind of a springboard to you doing research on some of the links between the developmental theories that we've been discussing and this topic of poverty. Now, for this paper, you're going to, out of the 4 articles that you're provided, pick 2 of them that you will be discussing in the paper. You'll be going over the details of them, the ways that these things imply the overlaps between some of the developmental themes we've talked about and poverty, and really just showing that you have a clear comprehension of the material and can connect ideas together. You're also, for this paper, going to use the textbook to describe the different theories of development in greater detail. And lastly, you're required to find 1 article on your own. Now, this might not seem like that big of a deal, but finding an article on your own, if this is your first time doing it, can be quite the task. The way to find research articles in psychology is to utilize a search engine called PsycArticles. It's actually something that we have available in our library, and the link to the library research, I guess, field is found here on this slide. But since this is such a monumental task, what the instructors for Psych 1 decided to do this semester is actually provide you with a video presentation from the head librarian at St. Mary's detailing how to go about searching for articles on this topic. I would love for these things to be relatively valuable for you, which means I want you to keep these limited to things that are published within the last 10 years, that are actual research articles, not lit reviews or book chapters or something like that, and that really do address things that you've been talking about in other portions of the paper. This means that you probably do have to do a bit of work to find an article on these topics. And the other goal that I want you to accomplish, I'm going to mention this a couple times, is I want you to find this on your own. Big components to this paper is you developing the skills to find articles on topics of interest. As you progress into future classes, this is going to be a common theme that you're going to have to engage in. Finding articles, relating it to certain topics that are covered in the book or covered in lecture. And your aim in this paper is partially to just develop the skills to be able to do that moving forward. Now, on the surface, this assignment might seem pretty easy, or at least just straightforward. But I do want to caution you, if you have not read journal articles before in psychology, they can be a little bit of a daunting task. And textbooks are easy to digest. They're a simplification of some very complex stuff. Research articles are definitely not simplifications of things. They're attempts by people doing research in psychology to lay out exactly what they did and why, statistically, what they found is what we call significant. This means that if you're a first-time reader of these articles, you might find yourself a little overwhelmed with the terms and details that are presented in them. What I want you to do for this paper is do your best to try to parse out and break down what it is these authors are describing. in your paper, I want to see you displaying maybe not perfect comprehension of everything from the articles, but good comprehension of what the authors are saying. To do this, you can't just constantly quote what the authors are stating in their articles, but instead you need to kind of give an overall summary of what it is they're doing and what it is they're saying. This is something that is an acquired skill. Summaries are not just you repeating or regurgitating what the authors are saying. It's you finding a way to take that message the author concocted and embed it within the message that you're trying to convey about this topic of, again, development and poverty. This means you should not only have a firm grasp of what the articles are entailing, but you should also have a very clear understanding of that development material, and especially the Erikson and Piaget stuff that we've been discussing in previous classes. You also want to, when writing this paper, make sure that you have smooth transitions and clear statements. This means this is not something that should be done the day before it's due. You really want to give yourself lots of time to write a very good paper, and you want to give me the ability to access the articles that you're going to use. So in addition to having to focus on writing a good paper, we're also going to have you develop the skills of writing an APA reference page. For those of you that have never done this before, don't fret. There's lots of resources out there that show people how to cite things appropriately and how to create a reference page. But one of my favorite resources for you that's out there is Purdue's website that actually details every time a new APA edition comes out how to cite and reference things appropriately. The link for this, as you can see, is provided here on the slide, and it's also provided in the paper instructions that you can locate on the class website. Now, for this paper, you are going to earn 30 points, and a lot of it has to do with, again, your description of the topics that you are going to be researching. You want to start this paper off by just talking about the connection between poverty and development in the United States. Obviously, you could potentially go to other places, but finding research on those topics might be a little bit more challenging. In addition to kind of creating that link, you're going to review, or at least summarize, the theories of Piaget and the theories of Erikson, and how these things could easily be tied to a lot of the poverty topics that you see in your readings that you've accumulated. After connecting all of these ideas, you're going to provide an overview, a conclusion of how these things are tied together. And then, as I mentioned before, provide APA formatted references and citations. Now, this paper can go a number of different directions depending upon the articles that you find. But it's my hope that you can really make the most of this and develop a lot of skills as you're going through it in addition to knowledge on the topic. So there's lots of points to be earned for just basic writing, organization, and a lot of the point totals here are a little vague because I do want to be able to kind of adjust to whatever people decide to write about. This is something that not only I'm trying to push and being a little open, but another thing that I'm really wanting to push this semester, and that's that I want you to make sure that the article you're finding is an article you yourself have acquired. In the last semester when I taught this, and I've heard this from other intro professors, some students felt the need to just share articles with their peers, essentially taking away one of the critical components to this paper assignment, the research process. That doesn't help you. That actually hinders your ability to be successful in future semesters if somebody's doing the research for you or accumulating the research for you. So I will potentially take off points for articles that seem to be extremely abundant across everybody when you're finding that third article. Obviously, the first two articles are going to overlap with other individuals. It's just going to happen since you're just picking 2 of 4 articles. But that third article really should be unique. It should be something you're obtaining by doing the search and following the directions that the head librarian gave as to how to do that search. So you can, again, have that skill ready for you as you progress into some of our future upper division classes. There are a few specifics to this paper that I also want you to be aware of. much like the previous one. This assignment is going to be due at the late evening of 11 p.m., and this time it's going to be due on November 23rd. Just like the last one, this is not something that you're going to hand in physically. Instead, you're going to submit it online on the class website as a file that's of one of the approved forms that Moodle can accept. This typically means PDFs, RTFs, or docs. Make sure when you're uploading it that it is uploaded correctly. You should be able to see the article. No Google Docs, no shared stuff that has to require some type of password or link to things. This is something that does not allow me to ensure that you submitted something on time, and two, something that does not allow our plagiarism checker to ensure that you're not plagiarizing things. Please note when you do submit it on the class website, because you're going to be providing that reference page and because you're going to be citing things appropriately, that you very well might see a plagiarism checker score when you submit this that's somewhat alarming. Right? I've seen papers that are submitted on this that have around 10 to 15% of their paper marked as plagiarized. That doesn't mean that plagiarism is actually in place. Plagiarism for this one is all about you using this phrasing and the statements of the authors from the articles or the author of the textbook as your own. So as an instructor, I don't necessarily look at the number on the plagiarism checker as much as I look at what's flagged as plagiarized. Do not plagiarize under any circumstances, but keep in mind, as I mentioned, you're going to have, if you're citing and actually referencing appropriately, a score that's not at 0%. It'd be very odd if you had a plagiarism score of 0%, in fact, impossible. So this is something that kind of has alarmed students in the past. I wanted to bring to your attention. But that means, as I mentioned, you do have to upload this correctly so the plagiarism checker can do its job and so I can ensure that you submitted this on time. If you don't submit it on time, I will allow you to continue submitting papers for up to 1 week, but you will receive a 25% point deduction from whatever grade you earn on the paper. This is because I really want to ensure that, one, you get this in on time. You've got almost a month to do it at this point. And two, I want to ensure that you're not having this bleed into the other stuff that you have for this class. This means that 25% deduction is not only something that I'm doing to kind of make sure that you don't wait weeks, but so that you don't wait until the last second to write this. It means internet issues, uploading troubles, issues that kind of pop up the day of when you're really trying to frantically write the paper. Those things will not be valid excuses for late assignments. Anything even a second late, turned in past 11 p.m. on the 23rd, will receive that 25% deduction. So please, under no circumstances should you be procrastinating on this and waiting to the last minute. Researching these topics, finding this information is challenging, and the only way you can get this done in an adequate amount of time and without a lot of stress is to get started as soon as possible. So I encourage you, after you're done listening to this, to look at the link that I'm going to provide to the class from the librarian that goes over all of the details of the assignment, at least how to find the article for the assignment, and then make sure that you're finding your articles and starting to read them. If you do that, this is something that can actually be a very enjoyable process, and hopefully you can get a lot out of it. With this, lecture, I think I've covered everything I need, so now it's your turn to watch that other video and to get the instructions for the paper so you can get yourself started. All of it's up on the class website by the time I post this recording. I hope all you are doing well, and take care.